Hi everyone, welcome back to the BookTubePrize channel. My name is Robert, and today I'm here to show you 10 new books that have been sent to me by publishers recently for consideration for next year's BookTube Prize, and today we're in the nonfiction division. The first one is called The Outlier by Kai Bird. 4 decades after Ronald Reagan's landslide win in 1980, Jimmy Carter's one-term presidency is often labeled a failure. Indeed, many Americans view Carter as the only ex-president to have used the White House as a stepping stone to greater achievements. But in retrospect, the Carter political odyssey is a rich and human story, marked by both formidable accomplishments and painful political adversity. In this deeply researched, brilliantly written account, Pulitzer Prize-winning biographer Kai Bird expertly unfolds the Carter saga as a tragic tipping point in American history. As president, Carter was not merely an outsider, he was an outlier. He was the only president in a century to grow up in the heart of the Deep South, and his born-again Christianity made him the most openly religious president in memory. This outlier brought to the White House a rare mix of humility, candor, and unnerving self-confidence that neither Washington nor America at large was ready to embrace. Decades before today's public reckoning with the vast gulf between America's ethos and its actions, Carter looked out on a nation torn by race and demoralized by Watergate and Vietnam, and prescribed a radical self-examination from which voters recoiled. The cost of his unshakable belief in doing the right thing would be losing his re-election bid and witnessing the ascendance of Reagan. In these remarkable pages, Bird traces the arc of Carter's administration, from his aggressive domestic agenda to his controversial foreign policy record, taking readers inside the Oval Office and through Carter's battles with both a political establishment and a Washington press corps that proved as adversarial as any foreign power. Bird shows how issues still hotly debated today, from national health care to growing inequality and racism to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, burned at the heart of Carter's America and consumed a president who found a moral duty in solving them. Drawing on interviews with Carter and members of his administration and recently declassified documents, Bird delivers a profound, clear-eyed evaluation of a leader whose legacy has been deeply misunderstood. The Outlier is the definitive account of an enigmatic presidency, both as it really happened and as it is remembered in the American consciousness. The next one is Diary of a Young Naturalist by Dara McAnulty. From 16-year-old Dara McAnulty, a globally renowned figure in the youth climate activist movement, Diary of a Young Naturalist chronicles the turning of a year in Northern Ireland. Beginning in spring, when the sparrows dig the moss from the guttering and the air is as puffed out as the robin's chest, these diary entries about Dara's connection to wildlife and the way he sees the world are vivid, evocative, and moving. Diary of a Young Naturalist captures Dara's perspective as a teenager juggling exams, friendships, and a life of campaigning. We see his close-knit family, the disruptions of moving and changing schools, and the complexities of living with autism. In writing this book, says Dara, I've experienced challenges, but also felt incredible joy, wonder, curiosity, and excitement. In sharing this journey, my hope is that people of all generations will not only understand autism a little more, but also appreciate a child's eye view on our delicate and changing biosphere. Winner of the Wainwright Prize for UK Nature Writing, Diary of a Young Naturalist is a triumphant debut from an important new voice. The next one is All That She Carried, The Journey of Ashley Sack, A Black Family Keepsake by Tiya Miles. In 1850s South Carolina, an enslaved woman named Rose faced a crisis, the imminent sale of her daughter Ashley. Thinking quickly, she packed a cotton bag with a few precious items as a token of love and to try to ensure Ashley's survival. Soon after, the 9-year-old girl was separated from her mother and sold. Decades later, Ashley's granddaughter Ruth embroidered this family history on the bag in spare yet haunting language, including Rose's wish that it be filled with my love always. Ruth's sewn words, the reason we remember Ashley's sack today, evoke a sweeping family story of loss and of love passed down through generations. Now, in this illuminating, deeply moving new book, inspired by Rose's gift to Ashley, historian Tiya Miles carefully unearths these women's faint presence in archival records to follow the paths of their lives, and the lives of so many women like them, to write a singular and revelatory history of the experience of slavery and the uncertain freedom afterwards in the United States. The search to uncover this history is part of the story itself. For where the historical record falls short of capturing Rose's, Ashley's, and Ruth's full lives, Miles turns to objects and to art as equally important sources, assembling a chorus of women's and families' stories and critiquing the scant archives that for decades have overlooked so many. The contents of Ashley's sack, a tattered dress, handfuls of pecans, a braid of hair, my love always, are eloquent evidence of the lives these women lived. As she follows Ashley's journey, Miles metaphorically unpacks the bag, deepening its emotional resonance and exploring the meanings and significance of everything it contained. All that she carried is a poignant story of resilience and of love passed down through generations of women against steep odds. It honors the creativity and fierce resourcefulness of people who preserved family ties even when official systems refused to do so, and it serves as a visionary illustration of how to reconstruct and recount their stories today. The next one is Journey to the Edge of Reason, The Life of Kurt Gödel by Stephen Budiansky. Nearly 100 years after its publication, Kurt Gödel's famous proof that every mathematical system must contain propositions that are true, yet never provable, continues to unsettle mathematics, philosophy, and computer science. Yet unlike Einstein, with whom he formed a warm and abiding friendship, Gödel has long escaped all but the most casual scrutiny of his life. Stephen Budiansky's Journey to the Edge of Reason is the first biography to fully draw upon Gödel's voluminous letters and writings, including a never-before-transcribed shorthand diary of his most intimate thoughts, to explore Gödel's profound intellectual friendships, his moving relationship with his mother, his troubled yet devoted marriage, and the debilitating bouts of paranoia that ultimately took his life. It also offers an intimate portrait of the scientific and intellectual circles in pre-war Vienna, a haunting account of Gödel's and Jewish intellectuals' flight from Austria and Germany at the start of the Second World War, and a vivid recreation of the early days of Princeton's Institute for Advanced Study, where Gödel and Einstein both worked. Eloquent and insightful, Journey to the Edge of Reason is a fully realized portrait of the odd, brilliant, and tormented man who has been called the greatest logician since Aristotle, and illuminates the far-reaching implications of Gödel's revolutionary ideas for philosophy, mathematics, artificial intelligence, and man's place in the cosmos. The next one is Halfway Home, Race, Punishment, and the Afterlife of Mass Incarceration by Reuben Jonathan Miller. Each year, more than 500,000 Americans are released from prison and join a population of 20 million people who live with a felony record. Reuben Jonathan Miller, a former chaplain at the Cook County Jail in Chicago and a sociologist studying mass incarceration, spent years alongside prisoners, ex-prisoners, their friends, and their families to understand the lifelong burden that even a single arrest can entail. What his work revealed is a simple, if overlooked, truth. Life after incarceration is its own form of prison. The idea that one can serve a debt and return to life as a full-fledged member of society is one of America's most nefarious myths. Recently released individuals are faced with jobs that are off limits, apartments that cannot be occupied, and votes that cannot be cast. As the color of law increased our understanding of housing segregation, Halfway Home shows that the American justice system does not rehabilitate and that mass incarceration has an afterlife. It locks millions of Americans out of the social, political, and economic life of the city and filters into our most intimate relationships. Informed by his experience as the son and brother of incarcerated men, Miller captures the stories of the men, women, and communities fighting against a system that is designed for them to fail. It is a poignant and eye-opening call to arms that reveals how laws, rules, and regulations extract a tangible cost not only from those working to rebuild their lives, but also from our democracy. As Miller searchingly explores, America must acknowledge and value the lives of its formerly imprisoned citizens. The next one is The Triumph of Nancy Reagan by Karen Tumulty. The made-in-Hollywood marriage of Ronald and Nancy Reagan is more than a love story. It's the partnership that made him president. Of the pair, Nancy was the one with the sharper instincts about people, the superior radar for trouble, and the keener sense of how to secure his place in history. The only person in the world to whom Ronald Reagan felt truly close, Nancy understood how to foster his strengths and compensate for his weaknesses. Neither timid nor apologetic about wielding her power, Nancy Reagan ultimately made herself a place in history. But that competence took years to develop. Nancy's traumatic early childhood instilled in her a lifelong anxiety and a craving for security. Born of a broken marriage, she spent 7 years yearning for the absent mother who abandoned her to pursue an acting career. When she met Ronnie, who had a difficult upbringing of his own, the two fractured halves became whole. And as Ronnie turned from acting to politics, she did too, helping build the scaffolding of his rise and cultivating the wealthy and powerful figures who would help pave his way. Not only was Nancy crucial in shaping Ronald's White House team and in softening her husband's rhetoric, but she also became an unseen force pushing her husband toward what she saw as his grandest purpose, to shake his image as a warmonger and leave behind a more peaceful world. This book explores the multifaceted character of Nancy Reagan and reveals new details surrounding the tumultuous presidency. Washington Post columnist Karen Tumulty spent 4 years interviewing the people who knew this couple best and draws on overlooked archives, letters, memoirs, and White House records, compiling the most extensive biography of Nancy Reagan yet. From the AIDS epidemic to tensions with the Soviets and the war on drugs, The Triumph of Nancy Reagan shows how Nancy Reagan became one of the most influential first ladies in history. The next one is Letters to Camondo by Edmund de Waal. Count Moise de Camondo lived a few doors away from Edmund de Waal's forebears, the Abruzzi, first encountered in his best-selling memoir, The Hare with Amber Eyes. Like the Abruzzi, the Camondos were part of Belle Epoque high society. They were also targets of anti-Semitism. Camondo created a spectacular house and filled it with the greatest private collection of French 18th century art for his son Nissim to inherit. But when Nissim was killed in the First World War, it became a memorial and, upon the Count's death, was bequeathed to France. The Musée Nissim de Camondo has remained unchanged since 1936. De Waal explores the lavish rooms and detailed archives and uncovers new layers to the family story. In a series of haunting letters addressed to the Count, he tells us what happened next. The next one is The Enlightenment, The Pursuit of Happiness, 1680 to 1790, by Ritchie, Robertson. One of the formative periods of European and world history, the Enlightenment is the fountainhead of modern secular Western values, religious tolerance, freedom of thought, speech, and the press, and rationality and evidence-based argument. Yet why, more than 300 years after it began, is the Enlightenment so profoundly misunderstood as the expression of soulless calculation? The answer may be that, to an extraordinary extent, we have accepted the account of the Enlightenment given by its conservative enemies, that Enlightenment necessarily implied hostility to religion or support for an unfettered free market, or that this was the best of all possible worlds. Ritchie Robertson goes back into the long 18th century, from approximately 1680 to 1790, to reveal what this much debated period was really about. Returning to the era's original texts, Robertson shows that the Enlightenment aimed to increase human happiness in this world rather than the next, by promoting scientific inquiry and reasoned argument. In doing so, Robertson chronicles the campaigns mounted by some enlightened characters against evils like capital punishment, judicial torture, serfdom, and the slave trade, featuring the experiences of major figures from Voltaire to Adam Smith, alongside ordinary people who lived through this extraordinary moment. In answering the question, "What is enlightenment?" in 1784, Immanuel Kant famously urged men and women to, above all, have the courage to use your own intellect. Robertson shows how the thinkers of the Enlightenment did just that, seeking a well-rounded understanding of humanity in which reason was balanced with emotion and sensibility. Drawing on philosophy, theology, historiography, and literature across the major Western European languages, the Enlightenment is a master class in big picture history about the foundational epoch of modern times. The next one is How the Word is Passed, a reckoning with the history of slavery across America by Clint Smith. Beginning in his hometown of New Orleans, Clint Smith leads the reader on an unforgettable tour of monuments and landmarks, those that are honest about the past and those that are not, that offer an intergenerational story of how slavery has been central in shaping our nation's collective history and memory. It is the story of the Monticello Plantation in Virginia, the estate where Thomas Jefferson wrote letters espousing the urgent need for liberty while enslaving more than 400 people. It is the story of the Whitney Plantation, one of the only former plantations devoted to preserving the experience of the enslaved people whose lives and work sustained it. It is the story of Angola, a former plantation-turned-maximum security prison in Louisiana that is filled with black men who work across the 18,000-acre land for virtually no pay. And it's the story of Blandford Cemetery, the final resting place of tens of thousands of Confederate soldiers. A deeply researched and transporting exploration of the legacy of slavery and its imprint on centuries of American history, How the Word is Passed illustrates how some of our country's most essential stories are hidden in plain view, whether in places we might drive by on our way to work, holidays such as Juneteenth, or entire neighborhoods like downtown Manhattan, where the brutal history of the trade in enslaved men, women, and children has been deeply imprinted. Informed by scholarship and brought to life by the stories of people living today, Smith's debut work of nonfiction is a landmark of reflection and insight that offers a new understanding of the hopeful role that memory and history can play in making sense of our country and how it has come to be. And our last one for today is Islands of Abandonment, Nature Rebounding in the Post-Human Landscape by Cal Flynn. Some of the only truly feral cattle in the world wander a long-abandoned island off the northernmost tip of Scotland. A variety of wildlife not seen in many lifetimes has rebounded on the irradiated grounds of Chernobyl. Rare orchids and endangered mammals proliferate in a narrow, demilitarized zone on the island of Cyprus. Exploring extraordinary places where humans no longer live, or where they survive only in tiny, precarious numbers, Islands of Abandonment gives us a glimpse of what nature gets up to when we're not there to see it. From Tanzanian mountains to the volcanic Caribbean, the forbidden forests of post-war France, to a rapidly emptying Detroit, Flynn brings together some of the most desolate, eerie, ravaged, and polluted areas in the world, and shows how, against all odds, they offer our best opportunities for environmental recovery. Each one is an island of teeming new life where nature has rushed in to fill the void, asserting its wild power and promise that even in a rapidly changing climate, all hope is not lost. By turns haunting and redemptive, this luminously written world study is pinned together with profound insight and new ecological discoveries that together map an answer to the big questions. What happens after we're gone? And how far can our damage to nature be undone? Okay, there you have it, the latest installment of nonfiction books for next year's BookTube Prize. And this catches me up for now. And so I'll see you again next time I have a group of 10 to share with you. Bye, everybody.